Thank you everyone for joining us for this webinar today. My name is Tim with Cerna Solutions, and this month for the webinar we are talking about taking ServiceNow widgets to the next level with Google Material Design Lite, or MDL, and hosted by the portal guru himself, Jeff Pierce. So we are very excited to have him as usual, and we're very excited to have you guys for this topic. And the reason why we wanted to do this specifically is because we talked to a lot of our customers, and they say that they are very excited about what they can do with Service Portal. It's made it a lot more accessible and easy to do something that they couldn't normally do in the older CMS system. But sometimes there's still some limitations between what they want to do they're currently doing, and so we wanted to try to answer a few of those questions and kind of show you how to take some of those options to the next level. If you guys have any questions throughout the webinar, this is something I always want to make sure I throw in there. We have a questions module in the GoToWebinar panel, so definitely feel free to throw in any questions that you have. We will try to get to all of them as best as we can before the end of the webinar. But as they pop in your head, go ahead and throw those in there, and we'll definitely be doing a Q&A session near the end where we'll go ahead and answer all of those. One question that most people have is, will this session be recorded? Will they have access to it? And the answer is absolutely. The recording, the handouts, and any of the links that Jeff talks about during this session will be sent to you by email, usually within the next couple of business days after this webinar is completed. So if you have any questions and you want to try and reach out to us sooner to see if we can get you that information faster, feel free to email us and we'll be happy to help you in any way possible. Now, as I was saying, Cerna Solutions specializes in ServiceNow consulting, implementations, integrations, and unique product offerings. And one of our major focuses is in Service Portal consulting, which you'll see obviously what we're talking about today, and also test management and other automated testing solutions like our Capio product, as well as remote administrative services. And just to get our pitch out of the way, for those of you that are considering a consulting company for your Service Portal needs, Cerna Solutions has over 7 years of experience in building custom employee portals. We focus on expert solutions, including how to do single and multiple service steps, incident deflection with tools such as knowledge base, optimized mobile portals, and asset-based self-service. And our main focus is on transforming how service management is used by all of your users. So that includes anyone on your technical team, as well as any of your end users or business users. If you have questions and want to learn more about what we do specifically with Service Portal Consulting, we do have a free Service Portal workshop that we'd love to tell you about. Feel free to ask us in the questions if you want us to talk to you about that, or contact us afterward, and we'll be happy to talk to you about that. So right now, I'm going to go ahead and throw it over to Jeff Pierce. Jeff is the Portal Practice Manager for Cerna Solutions. He has over 7 years of ServiceNow portal and platform experience alone, along with the rest of his team. He is a pro UX designer, and he is an avid ukulele and scuba enthusiast, which I think we mention every single time we do a webinar with you, Jeff. How are you doing today, Jeff?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Tim. So happy Thursday to everybody out there. Thanks for joining us today. I'm very happy to be providing another webinar for you, showing you great stuff that we can do in Service Portal. Yeah, so today's topic is Google's MDL library. So our agenda is to talk about what this library has to offer for you, how you can import it into your portal, and then we're going to take a look at creating a couple of widgets using those MDL components. Now, this is a short webinar today, so we aren't going to be doing any live coding, anything like that. I've already built this stuff, so we're just going to take a look at those things that I built and demo them for you. Now, all of the widgets and files that I show you will be available to you. We'll be emailing those out. We just can't upload them here. Those file types are not supported by GoToWebinar. And then we will be leaving about 5 minutes at the end for questions. So if you do have them, go ahead and pop them into the questions panel there, and we'll try to get to them all at the end of this webinar. All right, so first let's take a look at this MDL library. You know, what is it? Maybe you're not familiar with it. If you're not familiar with it, chances are you've probably seen elements of it, because if you've used any kind of Google application, you have encountered these along the way. So MDL stands for Material Design Lite, and that is the the UX library that Google uses for all of its applications. So they've made these available to us, the public, to use, which is awfully nice of them. It makes our jobs a lot easier when we want to build some cool widgets, because we don't have to build all this stuff from scratch anymore. So today we're going to be looking at specifically the cards. They have different types of cards. We're going to look at using the buttons, and then we will be talking about incorporating the tooltips. All right, so let's take a look at the cards first. I guess just quickly before I move on, we do have a presentation for this. I might go back and forth between it, but really this is just going to be mostly about demoing to you. But we do have the presentation which outlines everything that we covered, so you can always refer to that later on if you missed anything or you're multitasking. But I will stay mostly in my browser here, just so you know. Okay, so let's take a look at the cards, like I said. So of course, when you think about using these, it's like, why do we use them? Well, because they are some pretty nifty UX components that we don't have to design from scratch. You know, when we build our widgets, we could rely on just all the Bootstrap components that are available natively in Service Portal, which those are nice. There's a whole Bootstrap component library. I use that all the time. But I really like the MDL library because it's a little bit flashier. There's some nicer animations and features involved with them. But at the end of the day, it's really just an alternative library. And there are other UX libraries out there as well. So let's take a look at this card. So when building my portal, say I have the requirement that I want to show news from the knowledge base on the front page. So this event card would be a great candidate for doing that. So to use this, all I have to do is come here to the library and come down here to where the event card template starts. And now I can copy out all this CSS and HTML into my site or into my widget. Now, if I did this, if you just did this right now without doing anything else, it wouldn't work quite right. That's because all of these class names that we see here, for example, MDL card, MDL button colored, etc., those are going to be in a style sheet that we need to import first. And then if we're going to use components that involve animations or anything a little fancier, we also need to make sure that we have the MDL JavaScript file as well. So let's go and do that first. Let's take a look at how you would do that. So going to the Getting Started tab here, I can see the URLs for the files that I would need. You can use the Material Icons file if you want. I don't use the icons. I like to use the Font Awesome library, which is already included in Service Portal. So I'm just going to use the style sheet and the JavaScript file. Now, including these is super easy. You can do this right in the theme of your portal. So I'm going to go to Themes, and if you turn, now I'm in a Jakarta instance, by the way, and if you turn on the out-of-box Service Portal in Jakarta, it'll be using the stock high contrast theme. So I came here, and down in the related list, I see that there are related tabs for CSS and JS includes. That means I can add style sheets and JavaScript files right to the theme, and these will be included on every page in my portal then. So I've done just that. I've used the MDL style sheet and the MDL JS file that I got here from the MDL website. Now, just a quick note about the style sheet. If you use the MDL style sheet as provided by Google, it will interfere with your Bootstrap styles in the Service Portal, and it can cause some havoc. So I've created a modified version that has stripped out all of the conflicting styles. So that is also available in the packet of files that we'll be sending to you. So you don't have to do that. All right, so this is really all that has to be done to enable the library in our portal. Now we can go ahead and just start building widgets. So going back to the components, I took the template for this and I just copied and pasted it into a widget. Now, I didn't just start a widget from scratch. I used an existing knowledge base widget from the portal, just because I didn't want to write the server script and everything from scratch, because there's a lot that was already usable there. So now I did make a few modifications to this to make it work specifically for news, but largely this is the same as what you would have found in the I believe it's the KB most viewed widget. But what I did do is I totally replaced the template with the template that I got from the MDL library, and I made several updates in here. Essentially, what I'm doing is I'm taking the MDL component and I'm taking standard service portal functionality like AngularJS and how AngularJS works in the widgets, and I'm putting them together to create a reusable template now. So I've used the ng repeat directive to repeat this HTML for every article that comes back. So for every news article, it's going to print one of these cards, and then I'm using the AngularJS notation to include the fields that I want where I want, and to make the link that I want, include the icon, the colors, the link label. So all of this stuff now is configurable from the widget options. I also included the CSS that was listed here as well. Not all of these components have additional CSS to include. Most of them are handled just by that style sheet that we imported, but sometimes you will find some that do have some additional CSS to include. Okay, so in the portal itself, you can see I've added it to the page here, and this is what it looks like. So now I have these nice looking cards for my current news articles. And you can see when I go to the instance options for them, this has been really easy for me to configure now. So I was able to choose the color, the icon that I want to show, the page that I'm linking to, the link label, and then the category of the knowledge base that I want to display. So this doesn't just have to be for news. You can use this now for any category you want in the knowledge base. And then clicking on this will take you to that article. So now, as you saw, there are other kinds of card components that you could use with the images. Like this one I like to use as a banner on a splash page. These ones are nice to use for catalog items because quite often we have images that accompany our catalog items. So you can get very creative with these. But you know, the caveat is you're still going to have to modify them a little bit to be totally usable for your specific purpose. But the idea is that you don't have to design this from scratch now, and it's very easy to create these. Because like if you noticed in the widget here, I didn't really change anything with the structure of this HTML. I was just modifying the you know, the pieces that I wanted to be dynamic, which would be the colors and the content, etc. All right, so let's take a look at another component. Let's take a look at the buttons now. The buttons, so this is the FAB button, floating action button. And you might be familiar with this, maybe if you use Gmail on your phone, you've got the button down in the corner for composing a new email. That's exactly what this one is. So if we think about how this might be usable in a portal, you could think, well, you're going to need a button to allow users to create a new incident, or maybe you want a button to let users submit feedback. So those are some great applications for this type of button. Now, when you create a button that links to something in your portal, again, there's no reason to try to do that from scratch. We already have a widget that comes out of box, and that's the icon link widget, which is the widget that you see here in this gray bar. It's actually 4 instances of that widget here. And it makes it really easy to decide what icon to use, what color to use, what the name and the text will be, and what it links to. So I don't need to re-engineer all of that. So I just cloned that widget. I cloned it to be, and I called it the Cerna icon link. So we can take a look at that. So I didn't touch anything that was already there. So all of this stuff was already here in this widget, because you can see you could already choose from 3 different types of links to display. So all I did was added another option for this fab button. And so you'll see that this template right here is what I borrowed from right there. That's the exact same template pretty much. All that I changed was what's inside of it. I just made it, modified it to use the colors and the text and the link and everything from the options that I configured for this widget. So to create this button on my page was super easy. If we take a look at the options for that, we'll see there's the icon, there's the color. Now here's the type. I could have chosen one of these that were existing out of box, but I added this new option for fab. And then there's what it's linking to. It's linking to a catalog item, and there's the catalog. Or here's the type, which is catalog item, and then here's the actual catalog item I'm linking to. So this is, and then of course I added CSS for that specific type so that it floated there on the page and always stayed present. So that's a really nifty way to stick something on the page that you always want to be present, but you don't really want it to take up screen real estate. And then, of course, clicking that takes me right to the catalog item that I want to use. All right. Now, building onto that, there's something great we can do with the Tooltips component. So if we go look at that in the MDL library, you can see there's a couple different types that we can choose from. I'm going to use this large one. So that's the template right there for the large tooltip. Now, I didn't take this and put it in my widget. Instead, what I did is I created a directive. So this is actually my tooltip HTML right there. Not really my HTML, but to a shortcut to the HTML. And I'm doing this via a concept called directives. Directives is an AngularJS concept. In ServiceNow, you'll find them in the Angular Providers module. So let's go ahead and look at that. So we go to Angular Providers, and I'm going to find this one I created, Cerna MDL Tooltip. So this is a way to create reusable elements that are very easy to include than in any other widget. So this is where I've defined the HTML template, and I'm dynamically including the text of the tooltip from the options that are configured in the widget. And then also I have this script here. Now for a lot of these MDL components, no JavaScript is required. Just the HTML and CSS suffice to render the component. But some of these require this component handler to register the component. So in this case, the tooltip, it requires some JavaScript because we're only displaying the tooltip once we hover over an item. So that means that we need to actually register this component. So that's what this is right here. And so this looks a little intimidating, but it's actually a pretty easy template to follow for creating these directives. So now that I've created this directive, I don't have to ever put this HTML anywhere else if I want to use the tooltip. what I do instead is, here, let's go now to this widget, the Cerna icon link widget. Oops, I passed it up. Here we go, right there. So that's the name of my directive. Now, it does look a little bit different. My directive was actually named using camel case, but this is just kind of one of the things about how AngularJS works, is that when you turn it into a directive, it parses it out, and you just refer to it a little bit differently. And so this directive is only going to show if there is a tooltip for this item. And now there's one other thing that I had to do to enable this, and that's to actually include the directive in my Angular providers related list. So it's really easy to include your providers. You just open up the list editor, and these are all out-of-box providers, but here's the one that I already included, the one that I created. So to use that now, I've added it to this widget, the icon link widget. So that means for any time that I use this widget, I can configure a tooltip now. So I've used it on this one, this very first one. You can see hovering over it pops up the little tooltip that says all requests are subject to approval. So if I look at how that was configured, so I have all of the same options that we saw for the other icon links that you're used to. You know, the icon to use, the text, what you're linking to, etc. But then at the bottom we have this tooltip. So I just type that in, and now that there is text in this field, means that that tooltip will appear for this item. Okay. So those are a few examples of how you can use the MDL component library to get some great looking widgets, and without having to engineer all that HTML and CSS from scratch. It's a great accelerator, and it can greatly improve your user experience. Like we said, we'll be sending out all of the widgets and directives that we looked at. I'll be sending those to you, that you can import them into your instance and use them and play with them. Also stay tuned for this webinar. Will be going up on YouTube. I'll also be doing some blog posts in the near future that cover some more in-depth tutorials around some specific MDL components. All right, so at this point, we'd like to open it up to questions.
Yeah, we've actually got quite a few questions, and this is just a reminder for everyone right now that if you have any questions, we still have some time. We're obviously, you know, about 4 minutes away from the half-hour mark, but if any of you want to stick around and listen to us answer these questions, or if you have additional questions, definitely throw those in, and we're going to do our best to get through as many as possible. One of the questions that we received was, how can we use Angular material components instead of Google Material Design Lite?
In a very similar fashion. You can go out to the Angular UI website, and just like we imported the MDL JavaScript and CS files, you can do that in the same fashion with Angular. Now some of the nuances are a little bit different, but it's a similar process. Yeah, and but actually it's you know, in this scenario, we actually copied and pasted the CSS and HTML into our widgets. The Angular library, I believe, has them all ready to go as directives, and it's just it's easier to include them in your widgets. It's a little more complicated up front getting that that library loaded, but it is a similar process. Right, and that's one of the alternative. Like I said, there are many libraries out there, and so Angular UI is one, Bootstrap, MDL, Masonry, and there are others.
Now we have a few that came in from the same attendee. First one is, what is the overhead for loading MDL on top of the core Service Portal framework, Bootstrap, etc.? Is it possible to load Service Portal without Bootstrap or other libraries that aren't needed in order to lower the initial payload?
Loading it without Bootstrap, I'm not sure that's possible. I would have to do some investigation into that, but I don't think you have that choice. Otherwise, the overhead of including MDL is totally negligible. I've not noticed any kind of performance change at all, because it's a pretty light file. You know, it's a minified JS file, and the CSS file isn't that big, so it's not going to have an impact.
Okay, next question, same asker. How mature is MDL for mobile usage? Are there any conflicts with Service Portal?
How mature is it for mobile usage? It's incredibly mature. It's actually designed for mobile usage. You know, pretty much every library that you find is built with a mobile-first concept, so no concerns there. The second part of that was, I'm sorry, that was kind of a two-part question. What was the other?
Are there any any conflicts with Service Portal?
Yes. So I mentioned at the beginning, if you just import the CSS file as it is, it will totally conflict with all the Bootstrap styles, and I have not found a way to change the order of how they get loaded. So you're going to have conflict. That's why I don't use the CSS style sheet as provided by MDL. I modify it. I go in and I take out all the stuff that's going to conflict. For example, all of the heading tags and the anchor elements and ULs, LIs. You know, so styles that are applied to universal elements such as those, I take all those out and I just leave styles for the elements that are in class name. Excuse me, the elements and selectors that are unique to the MDL library. So that way you won't have any conflict.
Now here's a question that I thought was pretty interesting. Have you created any widgets in scoped applications, or are they all in global scope?
Now, when Service Portal first came out, there was some issue with creating your portals in scoped applications, and there were bad enough issues to where I just opted out of using the scoped applications. The nature of Service Portal, it was built really well so that your risk of impacting other things is very, very low. You know, you can't modify an out-of-box widget. You have to clone it in order to make any modifications to it. But we've since seen in later releases additional Service Portal plugins that are all scoped. For example, the Surveys and Assessments plugin that enables you to do surveys and assessments in the Service Portal, that is a scoped application. So even though I haven't gone back and done extensive homework on doing scoped applications with the portal, my assumption is that they must have resolved what was the issue, because now we're beginning to see these scoped applications.
Would you say that's still based on what version you're on?
Could be, but I think there might be another factor, and that's, you know, in the past when I've gone making a scoped application, I've included so even the portal record and all of the pages and the themes, all of that stuff I put into a scoped application and things broke. However, the plugins we've seen released recently weren't necessarily entire portals. They were just collections of widgets, new widgets, and pages. So I think that might have something to do with it, where you can probably scope all of your widgets, that custom widgets you create. But that'll take some experimentation. But just the caveat is there that in the first releases there were issues with that, and but actually they may have improved it since then. I wish I could answer that more definitively, but that requires some more homework.
Okay. And just a reminder, everyone, I mean, Jeff, do you have time to answer just a few more questions? Right now I know we're kind of past the mark.
Yeah, I can answer a few more.
Okay. We had one that looked like a two-part question. Can you show how you have created the CSS? And she defines later as how we will be defining style sheet reference in CSS, which you have created in beginning. Will it be possible for you to show it once again?
Sure. So the style sheet, now you can customize the style sheet in a very limited fashion, and it's kind of a joke in my opinion. You can essentially choose your primary and your secondary color and then download this style sheet. That's all you're allowed to modify, at least with this customization. They call it a theme builder, but that's kind of a joke. All you're doing is picking two colors. And then what that gives you is the URL to a style sheet with those two colors mentioned in here, for example, teal and amber. But if I take that and I go to that style sheet, you can see there are a lot of styles here. But the first section of this style sheet is all related to these universal elements. For example, all your heading elements, H6, P, H2, your anchors. So all of that stuff, I don't want it overriding any of that stuff. I'm okay with it using Bootstrap. Now, if I was just creating a portal totally from scratch and I wasn't using any other out-of-box widgets, I'd probably leave all this in. But in this example, where I'm just adding new widgets to the out-of-box portal, if I allowed all of these styles to come through, it would affect everything on the page almost. The avatar picture goes resizes, all of your headings resize, and it can be a little messy to clean up. So what I do is I've taken this and I stripped out all the stuff at the beginning that was referring to the common elements, and what that left me with was this file here that I just keep locally in my ServiceNow instance. It's several clicks to drill all the way down into this. And I just paste it in here. So you can see, I see this is modified for use in Service Portal by Jeff Pierce. And so now you can see these styles just start out right with the MDL specific selectors. And I kept this one in just because I knew that this wouldn't interfere with Bootstrap or anything else. And so everything else you'll find is specifically MDL selectors. Now you will see that there are still tons of colors specified, and these colors, of course, are coming straight from the colors that you've selected here. But these are easy to override. If you're going to put these components in a widget, actually you can see in some of these examples. Let's find one here. Is it this one? No, let's take a look at the card. So the card widget, by default, it had a color applied to MDL card. So if we looked up MDL card in this style sheet, we would find a color specified. Where is it? But I've just overridden it because I added this class in here, MDL card background, and then I'm bringing in whatever color I select in my options. So then I have these styles here for that. And there are ways to make this a little more reusable. I kind of did it in a little bit of a longhand version here, just for the sake of getting it ready for this webinar. But yeah, so that's I guess in a nutshell, that's the process I went through with including these styles, the MDL style sheet. Hope that answered your question.
All right, great. I think that's most of the questions that we have right now. If we did not get to your questions, I apologize. We will either try to reach out to you afterward or try to post something on our site. Feel free to give us a, contact us on our website at www.cernasolutions.com or email us at info@cernasolutions.com. And also feel free to check out the YouTube page that we have as well, where we post all of our webinars, and you can see what we've done in the past, as well as sign up for some of the webinars we'll be doing in the near future. Thank you again to everyone for attending, and we'll look forward to talking with you again soon.
Yeah, thank you all. Have a good day.